Over there. Yes. Good evening. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the City of Watsonville Community Redistricting Advisory Committee meeting, Thursday, October 14th. Sorry, apologize for running a little late here. Item on is roll call. You taking roll call?
Yes. Tabadas. Dodge.
Here.
Hernandez. Rivera.
Here.
Rodriguez. Salcido. Here. Sigismondi.
Present. Great, thank you, Madam City Clerk. Item 2 on our agenda this evening is presentations, oral communications. This is time set aside for members of the general public to address the Community Redistricting Advisory Committee on any item not on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public that would like to address us this evening on any item not on this evening's agenda? Good evening, sir.
I just want to thank the committee for their hard and long work. You know, we've been through these things a few times in the last couple of centuries, and so this is really a great opportunity to make progress and make sure everyone in this city is adequately represented. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for taking the time to address the Redistricting Advisory Committee this evening, sir. Is there any other members of the public that would like to address us on any items that are not on this evening's agenda?
We also need to check in Zoom to see if there's anyone.
Okay.
Alejandra, would you please check in Zoom if you think we do have one raised hand?
Yes, we do. We have Steve Trujillo.
Good evening, sir. Can you address? You're live. Trustee Trujillo. We can't hear you yet.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, we can.
You can hear me. Okay. Well, this is taken more than a little bit to try to get into this meeting. This is not exactly easy to use Zoom for this function, but I'm doing the best I can. I would like to thank Daniel Dodge for conducting this as the chair. And I want to point out that I was one of the original signatories that signed on to getting district elections. The attorney came to my classroom at Alisal High School, had me sign. And I've always believed in one person, one vote. I taught that for years in my American government classes when I was a teacher for 36 years. And it's very good to see all of you. I'm just sorry there are not more of you there. And I could not get to Starlight this evening, but I'm seeing all of you. And I do appreciate having you conduct this meeting. So I will be full rapt attention. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to address this, Trustee Trujillo. Is there any other comments on Zoom, or is that what I call it?
Not at this moment.
The volume, can you raise it?
Quite a way of doing business a little differently. Well, great. Well, I'm going to bring it back to the oral communication from any committee members. Any committee members like to address an item that's not on this evening's agenda? All good? Okay, thanks. No giants, and hopefully I'll be able to bring you some updates. So we'll move on to item 3, which is the consent agenda. Item 3A is a motion approving the minutes of September 9th, 2021, our last meeting that was held on June. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Can you do the whole consent agenda?
I'll read the whole thing?
Yes.
Okay. Consent agenda. All items appearing on the consent agenda are recommended actions, which are to be considered routine and will be acted upon as one consensus motion. Any items removed will be considered immediately after the consensus motion. The chair will allow public input prior to the approval of the consent agenda. Is there any public input on the consent agenda this evening? Great, I'm seeing there's none this evening. I want to bring it back to item 3A, motion approving minutes of September 9th, 2021. That's a motion to approve the advisory committee, the district advisory committee minutes. Motion for a second.
Can I clarify, are you also doing the report? The entire.
We already have a motion, should I just go through and do
Okay.
it individually? I apologize for that too. So there's a motion to approve minutes of the September 9th, 2021 meeting. Any discussion, comments? All those in favor say aye. Or do we have to do roll call and everything?
Yeah.
Okay,
Cavadas. Rivera. Trujillo. Aye. Dot.
aye. Item 3B, which the city clerk informed me that I should have done at the same time. I apologize, I'm a little rusty at this. Item 3B, community outreach report. Is there a motion to approve the community outreach report on the consent agendas? Motion, is there a second? Second? Any comments, discussion, or questions from anybody in the public? I mean, the committee.
I do have a question on the community outreach report. This is the report from the prior. This is the prior meetings report. Is that correct?
It's for the, all the outreach that we are doing so far and that we are planning to do. I also, if you see on the table, I also brought some of the forms so that you can take them with you and distribute them to friends.
And just a follow-up question to our last meeting, we had some discussion about outreach to the Mexico-speaking community, possible Zapotec tech translation. Is there any follow-up on that particular issue?
So we did look into it and also like for the meetings, what the law requires is that we get a request from the person that's going to be attending the meeting that wants that language, we have to provide that. We didn't receive any.
None for this particular.
Yes.
Is there any other discussion under approving the community outreach report? Seeing as there is none, can we get a roll call vote on the consent agenda item?
Cavadas. Rivera. Salcido.
Aye.
And Dot.
Great. Item 4 is items to be removed from the consent agenda. We didn't have that. Any items are removed for the discussion. Item 5 on our agenda this evening is reports to the Community Redistricting Advisory Committee. There's no action. This is not an action item. So item 5A is updated census data and tools. Item 1, oral report by Assistant City Clerk Ortiz.
We have a little change.
We changed.
Our special counsel is gonna do it and Urban is gonna assist them with some of it.
So this will be an oral report by the Assistant City Clerk and our consultant.
Yes, and he is doing it on Zoom.
Hi, Tom. Please.
Hi. Good evening. Can you hear me? Beatrice, I couldn't hear you very clearly, just distantly. Do you want me to go ahead and start mine and then turn to Michael's with you?
Start on the Michael's first.
Okay,
Michael?
start with Michael's.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay, let me try to find it here. I think that is it. Can you see it?
Yes.
Is that, do you have it up? Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yes.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I am a poor substitute for Michael Wagaman, but he will be back for your next meeting, and that will be a very interesting meeting because he will have his database and we'll be able with him and all the geographic overlays, and he will be able to display in real time all of the geography, the old districts, roads, everything that you want to look at when you are starting to draw at next meeting. But he wanted us to share with you tonight some updates on the census geography. As you know, when we had our first meeting, there was census information in. It has now been modified a little bit because, as you recall, under state law, there needed to be reassignment of incarcerated persons. That has now occurred, so the numbers have changed a little bit. So we'll show you some of the latest numbers here in a minute. But this slide from Michael is just making the point that this is a little bit of a technical small issue, but that the geography, census geography, meaning the census blocks and the census tracts, changed a little bit this cycle. So he's just saying that in this, if you can see these two drawings, that there are three small sections in the city that changed. And so that just means that there's non-conforming changes within the census geography for the city. And so that may tweak the numbers a little bit from the old districts, but it does not in any way complicate what you're going to be doing next in the next couple of meetings in terms of drawing new districts. Here are the new numbers. I have not looked back last week to see if they, or from the last meeting to see if they changed at all. My guess is they changed very, very little. This is a really interesting thing to note. As you can see, the ideal size of each district should be 7,537 because the total population is 52,760 divided by 7 districts. And if you'll see here, the deviations, the total deviation, so from the lowest populated, smallest populated district is District 2 now at, it's underpopulated at 5.7%. And the largest district now is 4 at 4.3%. If you take those together, you see that you are at exactly 10% total population deviation, which is really interesting. And because it means that the city has, for the most part, had pretty uniform growth, stable growth in the last 10 years. Your districts, if you wanted to, you could start with those districts that are in place now, because your total population is not very significant. It's under 10, well, it's right at 10, and the constitutional standard is that you have to have deviation under 10%. So you're right at that margin right now, which is unlike a lot of other jurisdictions. So in a way that may, depending on your how you want to approach this, maybe make your task a little bit easier. Here is the populations again. You'll see that in the total deviations. And then this citizen voting age population, we saw this last time. These are important for determining whether there's a Section 2 Voting Rights Act issue. And as you can see, there probably will not. We obviously, Michael and I will be looking at the drafts that you work with and create very carefully to make sure there isn't any Voting Rights Act issue. But as you can see, the populations generally suggest that there will not be one, just because every single district is over 50% Latino citizen voting age population. So there isn't a necessity to have to accommodate anything additionally. So that's also interesting. Here is Michael's plan for how to, we'll talk a little bit about public participation, which is so critical. And we ask for it in two ways. One is for people to, the public to provide information on communities of interest. We'll speak about that again in a second. And then also to just draw maps, whether it's a handwritten map, whether it's a description that you write out, whether you testify before the committee, all of that is really important. And he is providing one way of doing it, either through a worksheet or an interactive Excel spreadsheet, where he's cut up the city into what he calls slices with populations in them to give you a rough sense of what a district should be, and then kind of circle around them to make your district. That's one way of doing this. These are, just can correct me if I'm wrong, but these are all on your website now. They're all available for anyone who wants to either use the interactive one or print one out and submit it in writing to the city. So I'll drop that one out, and let's see if I can.
So at this time, we're going to show the committee the website so that they can know how to, where things are and how we do some of the documents that Michael provided.
I'm not sure. Do you mean the slices? I thought that was what we just showed.
Is this presentation on the website?
Yeah, he's just gonna show them the website.
Okay. Should I not share them?
Urban is gonna share now.
Great, great.
Yeah.
Will you be sending us an article again?
We send them to you in the email that we sent. Yeah. He made some changes to it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ruben Ortiz. I'm the Assistant City Clerk with the Watsonville City Clerk's Office. What I'll do is I'm going to add to Tom Willis' presentation. Thank you, Tom. And just take you on tour through our website. So we are at cityofwatsonville.org. Off of the Your Government page or the drop-down menu, we'll go down to redistricting. In redistricting, we have our meetings and reuniones in Spanish, which is where we keep all of our agendas and minutes. Right below that, we have redistricting maps and resources. And right below that, we have our Spanish pages. So we have the calendar of meetings, as well as maps and resources in Spanish. But I'll start by taking you to our English page. On our English page, we have buttons for each of our different resources to create your maps with. So we have our printable Watsonville Community of Interest Mapping Tool. So this is what we released at our first meeting. It's a document that allows you to identify those communities of interest and submit those to us so that we have that available. And we can consider that when we are creating our maps. So that's one of our resources. It's a questionnaire. And then at the bottom is a map of the city. And what you do is you just draw around the areas where you feel that there is a community of interest and you submit that to us. And there's instructions on how to do that here. But what I'd like to focus on is something new, which is our redistricting map proposals sheet. This is a document that we added this time around. It's meant so that you can look at the different slices, as Tom mentioned. So we have all of these different slices based on the census data. And what we do is we have each of these represents the population per slice. Now, Tom mentioned that we're shooting for roughly 7,500 people. So what you're going to do is you're going to take each of these slices and you're going to put them together to make one district. You can make one district, or you can make all 7 using this tool. It's printable. Or if you have the means, you can do this online and then submit to us in our office or via email here at cityclerk@cityofwatsonville.org. It's very simple to use. We have printouts in our office and at the city offices. And all you need to do is give us your name, your email, and explain to us why your plan is best, and just draw that out for us. We also have the downloadable redistricting map proposal worksheet, which I'll do now. It's an Excel sheet that downloads directly to your computer. And once that downloads, I'll switch over that Excel sheet. Bear with me for 1 second. In this Excel sheet, we have our instructions, which is our first tab in the Excel. So those of you who haven't used Excel before, there's tabs at the bottom of the page here. The first tab is our instructions. So it walks you through, and I won't read this for you out. It's better if you see a visual of it, but it tells you that we have the 82 different slices. It also tells you that we have a map feature, which is also at the bottom here, and then it has our plan creator. But rather than go through these instructions, which are available for you as a printout or a resource online, I'll just walk you through it. So that's the first tab. The second tab is our locator map, which again is the slices. This one doesn't have population, but it is numbered based off of that census tract information. So we go from 1, 2, and then we move along the map that way. And this page here is more of a resource tool as part of this worksheet. We have our plan creator, which is the real meat of this worksheet is this page here. And what we do is we just enter our basic information similar to what we did in the other sheet. And then we down here, this will all be auto-populated here for you. The direction is that you scroll down to this area here. This is the current district in which slice 1 is. So I'll jump back so that you can see slice 1. This is over here in the airport area. In my plan creator, we have slice 1. It's currently in district 3. It tells us the population count. And what I'll do is I'll just enter the new district number so that you can see what happens when you assign a new district to it. I'm going to assign district 4 to this slice 1. And what it'll do is it'll auto-populate the population here. It'll tell me the deviation, and it'll tell me the total population. And it'll tell me the Latino population or percentage that comes with. So we have the Latino population, we have the Asian breakdown, Black, and white. So this is to help us with that information that we need as far as the different groups of people that we have in our state. The goal here is that you would go down to all of our different slices, numbered 1 through 82. Assign it a district. You can assign it the current district or a new district in which you feel might work better for the city. And you can always refer back to this. I would recommend that you print this sheet out so that you know more or less where that slice is, and then go back to here and try and add up to that 7,500 number. So I have 336 so far. If I add slice 2 to district 4, that'll give me 656. So you'll work through that until you reach roughly 7,500 people, and you'll work through all of the districts using this worksheet. What will happen is we will receive this worksheet, and then we'll send this to Michael Wagman, who will put a map together for us that we will share with each of you at our next meeting. I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm going to go back to our website so I can show you some of the other options that we have for people. So we have these buttons just to make it clear to people that these are the resources. And then for those that are Spanish speakers, we have a button here also that will take us to the Spanish page. Right below that, we have our city charter in English, our Fair Maps Act, ACLU Redistricting Guide, geography. And we also have links to these same documents down here to make it easy for people who just want to go straight to the resource area. I'll click on the Spanish page, and it's basically the same thing. We're doing our best to translate all of our documents to Spanish. All of the items that I just showed you are also available here, and they're fully functional. This is our website, but we're open to feedback. If you have any feedback for us, we're happy to hear it. We're trying to improve this, make this as great as we can for our residents. And again, you can always call us at area code 831-768-3040, or you can email us at cityclerk@cityofwatsonville.org, and we welcome all that feedback. Send us your community of interest form, send us your maps, or if you have questions or suggestions, we're happy to help. Just give us a call or shoot us an email.
And just to add, for next meeting, we are going to have another system, automated system, so that people can draw maps and it actually will give them the numbers, and they don't have to be going
questions.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm kind of a visual person, and assuming I don't want to change every single district, would it be possible with the changes to superimpose our current districts on the slices map, so I can see where we are currently, and if we want to make adjustments based off of the new data, we do that based off of looking at the slices and the current demographics. And do the slices kind of match with our current districts? Like, would they easily fit into what we have now? I believe so. I haven't seen the new system, but I believe that when you add, when you move lines around, it will tell you how many, the population and putting it and all the changes that you're making, it will tell you. Just like the Excel spreadsheet, but you will have it in one place.
Do we, are we concluded with the reports at this particular time? So
Yes,
I believe Tom had a second.
that's what I was asking.
Tom, you'll do your second report at the next, on the next item.
Okay.
Yes, this is
So
for-
there are any questions for staff. Commissioner Hernandez, or committee member, Hernandez. Whatever we're at today.
Quick question or suggestion, we get PDF emails of the PowerPoint presentations, also the email PDF presentation. But if I could search for it on the city website, get emailed to the committee by PDF or however it is.
Yeah, it was included with the agenda, but we can extend it, sure.
And then also, the county got a map of the entire county with all the precincts individually marked, the precinct number and the population of each individual precinct. I thought that was pretty helpful because you can look at it in terms of like building blocks or kind of a sim city, you look at individual small precincts, whether it's like 12 people that live in that precinct or, 729. And block, people block. Some of that in terms of like our numbers.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am. No, but that was one of the things that he was asking, what type of overlay you guys wanted. You'll ask him to get it.
Really helpful looking at that map.
Did you have another question also, Trustee Hernandez?
Just those.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
Are there any other questions for staff at this particular time?
I have a question.
Sorry, what's the precinct, the difference between precincts and what we have right now? Right, what you mean by precinct?
Well, the information that we have in front of us, I believe, are census tracts, am I correct?
Yes.
Right. When we talk about precincts, we're talking about voting.
They're smaller, they're a lot smaller. They're a lot smaller.
Okay, so it's easier to manipulate.
Yeah, they're a lot smaller. And also, if you think about arterials on there too, some of the arterials, so we kind of get adjusted where we're at. But this is nice, but we really don't know where we're at.
Okay,
At least like over there, at least we have some of the main arterials. And maybe some of the, I think we find, freedom, main.
I think that would have, to echo on committee member, Trustee Rose. Felipe's question, I think the arterials are just, will help the public a little more, just common sense wise.
Yeah.
I know where Freedom Boulevard is located, but they also additional.
yeah.
So that, behind this worksheet here, this is a lot easier to read. And I know it's a lot of information stuff on the map. So maybe, on the website, we're linking out these worksheets for the different. So that, we can refer to those at the same time. But I really think it's personal that for this map specifically, having the lines show where each district is. That way when you do students
staff at this time? Good? All right, getting warmed up. Great, well then we'll move to item. Public, thank you very much. The page. This we'll take public input. Again, this is item updated census data tool. We received an oral report, and item 3 is public input. If any member of the public would like to comment at this time. Any member of the public like to comment at this time? Good evening.
This question is for Tom. Tom, you show us the pluses and the minuses for each of the districts. And it seems the total that you put, the population of Watsonville is 52,760. However, for 2019, the population was 43,818. Lost a little over 1,000 people. And so my question is, when you use people like that, does it have some kind of impact on the?
Can you hear her question, Tom?
I could only hear, not really. It said, could someone just restate it for me?
Is there okay? Can you hear me, Tom?
Can you, we're talking in here?
Yeah.
Can you hear her, Tom?
Yeah, now, go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
You gave information in terms of the pluses and minuses of each of the districts in terms of population. And so the total that you gave was that we have now 52,760 people. As of 2019, our population was 53,818, which means we lost a little over 1,000 people. And I'm sure we're just undercounted. My question to you was, losing people, even if it's just 1,000, does that not have an impact in redistricting?
That's a good question. I think it depends on what that 2019 number is. It may simply just be a difference of the data. The 2020 is the census. That's, as you know, the only time in every 10 years that the government tries to canvass every single person. And so that is always considered the most accurate statement of population. It's hard to know what that 2019 number could be. There are a couple of other entities that do estimates, including the census through what they call an American Community Survey, where they do much smaller samples every year. But it could be that, or it could be the California estimates population too. So it just may be a difference that loss of population may be just a difference in who is counting. But the census, 2020 census is considered, to be the most, accurate in terms of it's an actual count as best they can do. And that is, to answer your final question, that is what we are going to use. We're going to use the 2020 census number.
But okay, just to answer a little bit more, the city gets a report every week from the state with a different census, with a different population number, and we do use that in the update, but it's not the official census number. So in this case, I believe in 2011, the population was around 51,000. So we did gain about 1,000 from 2011.
Is there any other member of the public that would like to? Is there any other member of the public that would like to speak on this agenda? Oh, good evening, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Dodge. Tom, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can hear you.
They can probably hear me over on the airport somewhere. I think I'm loud enough.
The airport hears you. The airport hears you.
You know, I want to thank their consultants and staff and the public that participated in this. But it's pretty apparent as a keen-eyed member of the community that we really haven't lost population. If you drive around this evening, you'll see that the streets are full of cars. Streets that weren't full of cars 10 years ago. And so I'm not sure what we're going to do with the census numbers, but it's apparent to me, and I think most of the neighbors, that population has increased, and it's increased dramatically, and that I don't know how we're going to account for all those people who are uncounted. So I just want to go on public record as the census has bypassed us in many ways, that we've lost our senses with the census, and that we are undercounted, probably severely undercounted, and I'm not sure how that's going to affect the redistricting. It is what it is, but the community will suffer because it is undercounted. Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking the time to address this evening, City Councilman. Are there any other members of the public that would like to address us this evening?
We have one person to use it.
I'm so sorry I didn't see you there. Please go ahead. Trustee Trujillo, did you raise your hand? Are you on mute? Says he's talking.
Yes. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right. First of all, Lowell, we can hear you. Lowell, we can hear you in Pajaro Village. You're so loud. So you're not. Don't worry. You haven't lost your outdoor classroom voice. I haven't either. But I want to agree with Lowell. I was campaigning all last fall for the job I'm now in as Cabrillo trustee, representative of Area 7. And when I would go to a house and there would be 3 registered voters, there were often more than 4, 5, or even as many as 7, some whom were registered, some not. And this was not only in poor areas of my district, but even in wealthier areas of my district, where there were people that did not appear on any list. And I was quite shocked how many people I was able to talk to. And again, like Lowell pointed out, the amount of cars that are parked on many of these streets that didn't have as many cars parked 10 years ago convinced me that there were a lot of people that did not get counted in this crummy census. And frankly, it was very poorly run. And we all know who was president during the census. It wasn't Joe Biden. In any event, there are a lot of other people. I think we've got to have at least 53, 54, 55,000 people in Watsonville. And the reason is people want to live here. This is a wonderful place to live. People have discovered it. And for those who are living in an area where they're living in, for example, makeshift facilities and garages and carports and various things where they have beds, and I've ran into that more than once. It's quite clear that people want to live here even under conditions that are less than ideal. So what do we do about that in terms of redistricting, folks? Thank you.
Thank you very much for addressing the committee this evening, Trustee Trujillo. Tom, you're on the other end still?
Yep.
You want to try and address those questions?
Sure. Well, I think he makes some good points. Obviously, there has been a lot of controversy about this census and how accurate it has been, and whether they did undercount people because of both COVID and also because of just the lack of resources and importance assigned to it. That said, and to answer his question about what can be done about it, I think there are some jurisdictions, I know LA was talking about it, the city of Los Angeles was talking about it, to, you can, if you feel that there could be communities in your city that may have been undercounted, that could obviously be accommodated somewhat when you're talking about total population deviation, and take that into consideration when you're making those decisions about how big a community is. City of Los Angeles is thinking of doing something like that a little bit within the parameters of that 10%. So obviously the city did increase its population. It was very modest. The last census was 51,000, and this, I think, I don't have Michael's number right in front of me, but I think it's 52,760. So that is obviously a modest change, but it did increase.
Well, before I ask a question, I just want to go out one more time. Does any member of the public have any comments or questions, discussion, input? See, there's that, Tom. Really, I should have asked the question earlier, and I have two questions. One pertaining what you just said about. Well, maybe that's the first one. You referred to a couple of areas as non-conforming areas where there were changes. Is that what you call them, non-conforming areas? And could you explain what that means? Give me a little detail on what that means.
Yes, I hope I can. That is a Michael thing, but basically what he was saying was your districts from 2010, right, were based on the census geography that was used in 2010. Now, 10 years later, the census changes the way they construct census blocks and the way they change census tracts a little bit, not a lot. But say they take in, maybe they change something around because they take in the end of a street or something like that. So now to overlay your old districts on the new geography, they're just these three places that have quirks to them, if you will. So he has to accommodate for that when he's showing you the old districts. When he next meeting, when he shows you the old districts, there are those three little quirks, and he said only two of them were populated. My guess is that they're very, very very minor. So this won't affect the way, and all of the census geography obviously is in the borders of the city. So this really shouldn't affect what you're going to be doing going forward. I hope that answers the question.
You mean it really shouldn't affect the total data and the numbers of residents? Is that what we're talking about?
Exactly. Nor should it affect or impact the way you build your districts.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is, I found that interesting. You saying as long as that some municipalities might be making adjustments to undercounts, but staying within the 10% deviation, does that mean that they're allowed a little greater difference between the districts? So they're not all balanced. One could be a little higher than another to be able to accommodate that within that deviation, to be able to accommodate some of the possible undercount.
That's exactly right. And, some jurisdictions like this, so we have this boundary, right, of 10% total deviation. And some jurisdictions like to say for congressional districts, they have to be absolutely mathematically exact. For city boundaries, you can have a total deviation of 10%. So some cities like to say, you know what, we want no deviations whatsoever. We want perfect, consistency. But I think what a lot of other jurisdictions are finding is, you have a little bit of play in that 10% to address areas where you think may have been undercounted. Or where you think there might be a lot of growth in the next 10 years and there will be more people in those districts in the next 10 years. Maybe you keep that district smaller because naturally over the course of 10 years, there are going to be more people coming into that district.
Is there any legal factual finding that allows, that sets any criteria for that? Or is that still
It's a real art, as long as you're within the 10%, you should be fine. And, Michael can help with that in terms of like, if you say, this area of the city has a new development in it, we think that's going to be 1,000 people or 500 people, whatever it is, then you take that into consideration. It's not perfect, but you take that into consideration, or you can.
Well, the reason I'll give you a difference between, you have a District 2 on this map was in our packet with the numbers. Current districts adjusted, I guess is what it's, the title of it is. You have a -5% in District 2 and a +4% in District 6. So you're saying we could play around with those kind of adjustments in the deviation of the population to be able to, as long as we stay under 10%.
Exactly. So, unnaturally you would say, okay, well, District 2 needs more people. You're going to expand the size of District 2 to bring in more people, but maybe there are other considerations why you wouldn't do that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else have questions? I know we're out of order a little bit, but please go ahead.
I just had a follow-up question to that. So we're talking about deviation, and let's hypothetically say that we think District 2 has undercounted. So we have people there that for whatever reason in 2020 did not want to respond to the census. Maybe there was fear or something like that. And we think it's undercounted in 2. Would the adjustment be helpful to underestimate that population? Like, which way does the deviation go for an underrepresented area? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. In that situation, you would probably want to make it you would want to make it smaller, right? Because, no, I'm sorry, you would want to make it larger.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I can follow up and during our next meeting, let you know, the city of Los Angeles is ahead of people because they have a primary in June. And I'm I'll let you know what they might be doing on that end.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Just follow through to the city clerk and she'll keep us informed and take care of the public notice, however that possibly works. Committee member, Rivera, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I do have a question. I think that it would be helpful for the public to understand this idea of deviation, because it is a little confusing, with the idea of redrawing districts to disperse population evenly, and then you have this concept of deviation. It makes it seem a little messy. So if you could just explain the purpose of the deviation and just a little more information about that, I think that would be helpful to have on record.
Could you hear him, Tom?
Just I missed the purpose of from there on out, I lost a little bit.
Great.
I think I captured it. He's asking if you can give us, for the public members that might be watching us on Zoom, and even ourselves as community members, could you give us a little more concrete definition what the deviation means, as opposed to like drawing districts completely balanced as you measure with the House of Representatives? What's deviation? Yeah.
Absolutely. Let me see if do I have Michael still up? Don't think I do. So deviation is simply the concept of if you have 5 districts and the city is 50,000 people, then your district will be, if it's perfectly, there's no deviation whatsoever. Each district will have, what did I say, 50,000, 5,000. If you have 100,000 residents, 10 districts, each would have 10,000 people. And then total deviation means that if District 1 has 100 more people, then it is 1% up above the perfect mean. And if District 2 has 900, then it falls one. I've kind of lost my numbers, but basically, it's total deviation is simply you take the perfect number, you've just divide your population by the number of districts. That gives you the perfect number that each district should be, and then to the extent that each district is either above that in population or below that, that's where you get your deviation. And a total deviation is when you take your highest overly populated district and your lowest underpopulated district and just combine those two percentages.
And what is the overall intent of having deviation in the process of this?
It's a measure of one person, one vote. Essentially, it goes back to one person, one vote, that you want everyone to have a reasonably equal vote. And so an overly populated district means that there are more people that have less of a share of a vote than a district that is underpopulated. So you're just trying to even out the one person, one vote concept among districts.
Thank you, Tom. That was, you answered my question. Thanks.
Great. Any other members of the committee? I know I went out of order. I apologize. Any other questions for Tom or staff? Seeing as there's none, we're going to move on to, and thank you very much for answering those, Tom. We're going to move on to item 6, the public hearing. This is the summary of redistricting criteria to gain public input. Oral report by Special Counsel Willis.
Okay. Can you, let's see here. Is my PowerPoint up?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, we can see it.
great. Okay, just be very quick here so we can get on to the public hearing and participate. I just wanted to go over the process, the standards very quickly, and then communities of interest, the concept of communities of interest one last time. So tonight, the main purpose here is to hear from the committee members, obviously, and answer their questions, and also gather public input on communities of interest and other things that the public would be interested in having these districts represent. But the much more interesting meetings begin next time, which is October 28th and November 18th. That's when Michael will be there with his database, and which will provide you visualizations of the old districts, geographical overlays, so you can say, I want to see a district, I want to see where this street is or where this neighborhood is. And he has already created a database that has zoning information with respect to schools. It has planning zones. It has major streets. It has the old districts on it. So that's will be very, very helpful. And I think will make this a lot more concrete than kind of this more theoretical discussion that we've had in the last two meetings. At that meeting, you will start to give him direction about what you would like to see from him. Next time he'll probably put together 3 different draft maps for you. After that meeting, they'll be published well in advance of that meeting, and then you'll come back on November 18th.
This is Erwin. Hear me now?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Can you hear us, Tom?
Yes.
Yeah, we lost our.
Can you hear me? Erwin?
I want the app right.
Coming.
Can you,
Nice to see you.
Have a great evening.
Bye.
I jumped off with on this laptop to get a bit more bandwidth, so hopefully that helps a little bit.
can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Can now.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Clear.
I'm so sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
Get off of it then.
Yeah, stop watching the video.
Oh.
please.
I'm actually doing this one.
Oh my God.
Well, I'm sure that messed it all up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can see it.
We dropped off a couple calls here to give us more bandwidth time. Hopefully this time it'll work. Apologies
Okay.
about that.
That's okay. Sorry about that. I hope it wasn't on my end. Let's see, and I guess, do you have my PowerPoint up? Or not?
No.
Did you use that?
I think Orwan, you're sharing the screen view instead of him. Well, no, it's Tom, but, okay.
Can Erwin get it?
Yeah, you can share his PowerPoint.
Tom, would you mind trying, because I jumped off the call, it's not allowing me to share. Could you try?
Can you try it again, Tom?
Sharing your
Sure.
screen.
Okay,
Did
yeah,
that-
I can see it.
Did that do it?
Orwan,
Is
you
it-
just have to,
Did that do it?
yeah, Orwan, but we're seeing his face instead of the PowerPoint.
You don't have the
No,
PowerPoint?
don't do anything.
You're good.
I'm
You're
good.
now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should I keep going?
Yes.
Okay,
Start from the beginning.
from the beginning?
Yes. Sorry.
So I just wanted to go over quickly the redistricting, just your schedule, and then the legal standards to keep in mind, and then what we would like the public testimony to focus on. Obviously, any public testimony, all public testimony is very, very helpful in this, and want to talk about getting testimony about communities of interest. So tonight is about that, is to hear from the committee members and also the public about communities of interest and gather that information. But obviously, this is more theoretical at this point. It becomes more interesting at your next meeting. That's October 28th, when Michael will have his full database available and can show you visualizations of the old districts, of all the geographical overlays he has already built into the database. That would include zoning districts, school districts, points of interest within the city, where downtown is, where schools are, all of those things, where neighborhoods are. So that's very, very helpful. And that really brings this down to from kind of a theoretical level to a very practical level, which is extremely helpful. So at that meeting, you'll also give Michael direction on how you want him to proceed on draft maps. He will provide three draft maps or more if you would like him to. We've usually found that it's good to have 3 draft maps to look at as a way to kind of react to them and see what you like better. Then he will present those draft maps on November 18th. receive public comment on those drafts and receive committee direction whether to revise those drafts, draw a new draft map, et cetera. And then finally, on December 9th is the final proposed meeting. That's when Michael will present any new drafts or revised drafts, as well as you will also have the drafts that he originally created. You'll receive public input on those drafts. And then at that time, the committee will decide which map to recommend to the city council. Just review quickly the criteria that we all, that these districts all must conform to. The first is a set of federal requirements. That's equal population. That's what we were talking about with deviation. Total deviation should be less than 10%. Equal protection. Race cannot be a predominant factor when drawing lines. The Voting Rights Act, we've discussed that a little bit. I don't think that's going to be an issue, given the population and just those citizen voting age numbers that we saw. We can get into that if you have any questions about that, but I don't think the Voting Rights Act will be an issue. Obviously, Michael and I will be very careful in reviewing all the drafts to make sure that they are compliant with these standards. The ones that are really important in terms of giving direction to Michael for next meeting are more these standards, which are, direction about which natural boundaries and street lines and city and other natural boundaries should be followed to separate the districts. These, by the way, are standards that are in your charter that they should follow. Common sense geographical boundaries, that they should be cohesive, contiguous, and compact. And then finally, but oftentimes most important, that you want to minimize divisions of communities of interest. So if there's a community of interest that is a school zone, you would like to try to minimize the division of that school zone. You'd want to keep them whole so they can have a representative to go to about their common concerns. Districts cannot favor or discriminate against any political party. That's just a prohibition. But the cities you won't have any political data in front of you anyway, so that makes that pretty easy. Then finally, I just want to go over the public participation proceedings. Again, every single hearing that you have is a public hearing with the goal of receiving as much public input as you can, whether it's in writing, whether it's testimony about how the public would want their districts to be drawn. And in particular, as Erwin mentioned, there are 3 or 4 different ways to provide that testimony. The one that is most important now is providing the city with information about communities of interest. What does community of interest mean? We talked a little bit about that at the first meeting. It's really a neighborhood or group of people within a geographic area. You have to keep that in mind. It's got to be within a geographic area, who have common policy concerns and would benefit from being maintained in a single district. That can be whether it's an asset or a nuisance. It can be either, or it can be common socioeconomic interest. It could be language. You mentioned an airport. Oftentimes in redistricting, airports are critical because people want to be kept together so they can have a person to go to discuss airport noise, for example. Or if there's a park that neighbors live around and they have concerns about the park, the safety of the park, or the beautification of the park, they could consider themselves a community of interest. So there's no fixed definition, and all the information, the better, in terms of what parts of the city should be kept together. That's really what we're trying to get in this testimony. So that is it for that. Do you have any questions on those?
Try that again. Committee members, do you have any questions for Tom this evening? Any committee members have questions for Tom on that criteria?
Pretty much a recap of our last meeting, right?
Yes. Seeing as there's no questions from the committee at this particular time, we're going to open up to a public hearing. Is there any member of the public that would like to address us on item 6A, summary of the redistricting criteria to guide public input? Any member of the public like to address us this evening? Let's go to Zoom. Is there anybody on Zoom?
No, there's nobody on Zoom at this moment.
Thank you, mysterious voice from above. I appreciate that. So we'll close the public hearing on this item, the summary of redistricting criteria. Thank you, Tom, for taking the time to address us this evening and getting the hype up for our next meeting. Where really gets down to it. We don't have any other items on the agenda.
May I ask?
Please.
Tom, I heard someone ask a question before and they didn't ask it. They were asking if a council member can submit community of interest or maps themselves at this point.
Yes, I mean, as long as that, yes, I mean, anyone can and should provide, evidence, and as a member of the public, they are, entitled to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Tom.
I'm sorry, we do now at this point have a member of the public on Zoom wishing to speak.
On the last item?
Yes. So Steve Trujillo, go ahead.
If there's no objections, please go ahead, community member.
Steve, go ahead.
Trustee Trujillo, I believe you're up.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, 10-4.
Okay, I lost sound 10 minutes ago. I've been trying to reach Tom Wolf as best as possible to figure out what he's saying, and it's difficult when there's no sound. So my point is that I read and I got the next of what they're about, and I do have specific neighborhoods that I think join my District 7 perfectly because they have common interests. So do I submit in writing? Do I directly to Tom? I don't have his email. Do I to Daniel Senior? What do I do?
Beatrice, do you want to
Thank you.
address that?
Yes, you can submit it to the to us, Irwin or myself, or to the city clerk at city. Just send it to us. You have my email. Just you can send it. You can bring it in.
Okay.
If you do it by hand, you can bring it to our office. If you do it online, you can just email it to us. And that information is also on the website, and we have the email, and you can click on the email and send it.
I also believe city staff is available during the course of the day to be able to answer questions at City Hall.
Yes, we also have a computer in our office dedicated for the public. If they want to use the computer there and they have questions, we can help them use the computer there.
I would also just add one thing if I can, which is, and I think Irwin touched on this already, but if you have a partial district that you want to give testimony on, draw it with the slices or draw it in hand, Michael will digitize that and pull it up if anyone asks at the meeting. So even if you don't have time to or you are most interested in just one area of the city, draw that or provide testimony on that. He can put that together. You don't need to have a perfect map. And then oftentimes just that testimony is very helpful because it shows how people think about a particular area of the city. So all of this public input will be digitized and made available for the committee at the next meeting.
Thank you very much. I see, is there anybody else on the line, on the Zoom that was wanted to ask a question?
No, not at the moment. That was it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, committee members. We shall see each other in 2 weeks to be able to work on some maps and really have some definitive work to do. So thank you very much for being here this evening. We'll move to adjourn. Do we have to have a motion to adjourn?
No.
Okay. Good night.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.